Today we're going to be looking at the Thypoch Simera-C lenses. They're small, they're affordable, and I think they look rather good. You know, affordable CINE primes are nothing new. We've got tons of options to choose from these days, but I think across most of them, there's always caveats or catches. They're maybe not that cheap, or maybe they're optically not very good, maybe they're not very fast, or maybe when you shoot with them wide open they completely fall apart, or maybe they're just very bulky and heavy and not very easy to work with. So how do the Thypoch Simera-Cs fare? And more importantly, what I'm interested in looking at is whether this lens set could finally replace my aging DZOFILM Vespid primes. So let's find out. So these lenses are all T1.5, so they're pretty fast for their price and size. But they also come with a nice spread of focal lengths. It definitely favors the wider end of the spectrum, so the tightest lens focal length available is a 75mm. For me, that's kind of perfect. That's kind of about as far as I tend to need to go in most of my work. I mostly shoot interviews and docs. They come in two mounts. E-mount and M-mount, and M-mount is what makes these lenses so interesting. So I think the only other lens set that I've used that comes in an M-mount is the Cooke SP3s. And what's special about this mount is that it's, I believe, an old Leica mount that can be adapted to pretty much any mirrorless mount out there with the use of a simple, cheap adapter. Thypoch even make their own locking M-mount adapter, and I would definitely recommend getting a locking adapter if you use these lenses in M-mount, because if you're using focus motors or anything like that, typically it's not a locking mount like other mirrorless mounts, so you want to keep it secure so the lenses aren't firing off if you're using motors or anything like that. But alongside all of this, these lenses are also absolutely tiny and incredibly lightweight, and for me, that is the biggest attraction. So I've shot a few professional projects with these lenses now, and most recently I shot a short doc on the Nikon ZR with the Thypoch Simera-Cs, and I just love the footage I got back. They were a perfect pairing. I bought some really cheap screw-on diopters. You can get them for about $20, $30, 20 quid on Amazon. I've talked about them on the channel before, and they just screw onto the front of your lens, and they're kind of like adding a magnifying glass to the front of your lens that basically convert any lens into a macro lens. It allowed us to get these really cool POV shots with a magic arm and a pencil. And this kind of setup just wouldn't have been possible on other lens sets, like not even my Vespids, which are considered small, and especially not a lens set like the R. It would have just been way too heavy and bulky and not something the artist would have been able to operate and hold. I think this is just what modern kit allows you to do. These lenses are so small, they don't get in the way, they help unlock your creativity. I love the R, but working with those definitely slows me down. I need to reconfigure my camera setup, probably have rails and a lens support on a smaller lens mount like on the Nikon ZR. It's definitely more tiring than operating a streamlined kit like this, which is super mobile, super flexible, and super agile. I really like the look of these lenses. Long-term viewers of this channel will know that I don't tend to go for super sharp or clean lenses. I like my lenses to have a bit of character, render a slightly more interesting image, and these definitely deliver on that front. They're not wild or anything like that. They're not super crazy old vintage lenses, but they definitely veer towards, that vintage territory. In terms of flaring, the actual flares themselves are pretty nice, nothing particularly wild. The lenses do exhibit some veiling glare, so if you are planning on shooting into direct, strong light, then a matte box is a good idea. The lenses do have a bit of focus breathing, as you can see here. For me, it's not really a deal breaker. In practice, it never really bothered me. You can see here when I combined the DJI Focus Pro with these lenses, we had lots of movement, lots of tracking shots, and the focus breathing never became particularly problematic to me. Obviously, if you maybe shoot narrative or do lots of focus racks and pulls from close to far, you're going to notice it. But if you're not really doing that and you're just doing sort of general focus pulls or tracking motion, it probably isn't going to be an issue. And for me, the size and quality of the lenses is far more important than the focus breathing to me. And I particularly like the way that they render the out of focus area, the bokeh, and at times, especially on the wider focal lengths, it can take on this quite sort of swirly nature. You know, they're T1.5, so you have the option of shooting wide open on these lenses and getting very shallow depth of field. I would say they perform best once you've stopped them down a little bit, but they don't look particularly funky or crazy wide open. They're not plagued with loads of chromatic aberration or ghosting. Contrast and sharpness obviously does improve as you stop them down towards T2.8. If you are shooting interviews, then I would say the lenses definitely perform well between T2 and T2.8, but if you want the ultimate performance from them, then stopping them down to T4 and T5.6 will give you the best performance in terms of edge-to-edge sharpness and tidying up some of that chromatic aberration. I mean, just look at this stuff that I shot on the LUMIX S1 Mark II, a camera that can look quite clean and sharp and digital at times. I think combining these lenses with that camera is a really nice pairing if you want to take the edge off that sensor. And I think particularly when I was capturing in OpenGate and in ProRes RAW internal, the images I got back were just stunning. I think if you are someone who travels or works with small crews on smaller projects but still wants to benefit from a CINE prime workflow, these are going to be some really great lenses for you to consider. Okay, so these are my DZOFILM Vesta primes. Basically, the first set of CINE primes I ever got myself, and the case is absolutely enormous. So I went from maybe using 1 or 2 zoom lenses, still lenses, to this huge, really heavy belly case, and to be honest, that was a huge adjustment for me, and it's one that I found quite difficult. However, these are the Thypochs. As you can see, they are so much smaller. This case I can easily lift with one hand, which I definitely couldn't do that with my Vespids. Thought I'd show you a quick size comparison between the Vespids and the Thypochs. I can definitely feel the weight and heft of this Vespid in my hand. The Thypoch barely registers, it's nothing. So when you've got a case full of these, it is heavy duty. Whereas this tiny little case for the Thypochs is not going to give you any trouble at all. I wanted to show you a quick side-by-side comparison. So here we are comparing 35mm from both lens sets, shot at T2.8 on the PYXIS 6K. When we cycle through the footage and show side by side, we can see immediate differences between these two lens sets. So the Thypochs definitely render warmer with a bit more of a green tint compared to the Vespids. They seem to have more color saturation and also overall contrast. I think that's a benefit when it comes to rendering skin tones, because the warmer tone of the Thypochs definitely benefits skin tones in my opinion, whereas subjects look a little bit more paler and a bit more magenta leaning in the Vespids. In terms of sharpness, I wouldn't say it's a night and day difference. And if we look at the bokeh in the background, then we can definitely see evidence of the color saturation here. The lights just hold a little bit more color intensity. In terms of quality of bokeh, they seem to render quite similarly, with a hint of chromatic aberration and fringing around these bright light sources. And then if we quickly zoom into this blue sofa in the background, we can see again the improved color saturation of the Thypochs and the contrast coming through as well. When it gets to minimum focus, the Thypochs, probably due to their size, don't have the most incredible close focus, whereas the Vespids, which are larger, heavier lenses, do perform a bit better here. As you can see, we're getting much closer up on Matt's eyes. And then quick look at focus breathing. Here we can see quite a lot of focus breathing going on the Thypochs, but on the Vespid, it's really well controlled. And if I quickly just jump over to the Sigma Art 24-70, a very modern, clinical, neutral looking lens, you'll see even this lens suffers from focus breathing as well. And here's the Sigma Art 24-70. As you can see around the bokeh, it has less chromatic aberration, it's a bit sharper, and overall it's just a bit more neutral in terms of the warm cast that we see in the Thypochs. And I guess in terms of color rendering, it has similar contrast, but in terms of color rendering, it sits somewhere between the Vespid and the Thypoch. There is so much love about these lenses. They're affordable, there's a good spread of focal lengths, they're optically interesting, they're fast. So if you're worried about low light, you can open them right up. They don't immediately fall apart at that wide T-stop. They have a great compact form factor, size and weight. and they come in M mount, which means you're not locked in or have to make a difficult decision about which mount to buy. If you're thinking about just getting a few focal lengths, I guess my most used focal length out of the set is the 35. The least used is probably the 75, so if you were looking just to pick one or two up, I would definitely start with the 35 and maybe consider the 21. I would love to see Thypoch expand the focal range, maybe something wider, and also maybe completing the set with a macro or something a bit tighter, maybe 100 or 120mm. Like, we obsess over lens quality with lenses, but we also need to factor in the practicalities of using lenses in our day-to-day work. Over the last few years, I've shot with lots of lenses. I own a set of DZOFILM Vespid primes, and those are considered small, compact cine primes, but carrying a case of those around is still heavy and bulky. Last year, I got the chance to shoot on the DZOFILM ZR as well, and while I absolutely adore those lenses, the case, the Pelly case for just 4 or 5 of those is extremely heavy. And whenever I've been on location shooting docs, they are a bit of a hassle to move around when we're moving about and on the fly and moving quickly. And I generally think I will move over to these lenses, especially for smaller projects, over my DZOFILM Vespid primes. And I think in the coming year, I may consider selling on my Vespid primes. Shooting professional projects with the Thypoch Simera-Cs over the last few months has just kind of convinced me that I don't necessarily always need to be shooting on huge, heavy lens sets, and that there is just a lot of benefit and upside in using something a bit more compact and small. So if you are on the lookout for a new compact cine prime set, definitely check these lenses out. I think there's a lot to like for them, and I think they offer a lot over a lot of the competition. I'll have an affiliate code down below. I think that also comes with a bit of a discount, so do check that out. If you have any questions about these lenses, please just drop them in the comments down below, and I'll do my best to get back to you. But anyway, thanks for watching. My name's Ed, and until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.